Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV, where we believe that you have the power to be a giant in your own world. Oh my gosh, today we are going to discuss the secrets of successful coaching. So buckle it up. Here we go. It's time to wake up the sleeping giant.
Buttercup.
Go sleep whisper. I like the buckle up buttercup better than the ghostly whisper. Nick's trying on new lighting today. And this color is brought to you by the color Ghostly Whisper.
50 shades of white.
White
Yep.
and light blue.
And light blue.
Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, co-host of Wake Up with Giants TV and co-founder of A Tribe of Giants and 12 Journeys Coaching. And I am here with Mr. Nicholas T. Smith in the flesh. He's not a ghost. He's real. Just a little pale. Irish pale, as he calls himself.
Yeah, my Irish bloodline is coming through.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, he is here and he is ready, and we're excited. We've got our Y Fellowship retreat coming up at the end of September. This is for men. Sorry, women, you don't get to come to this one, but we'll do something in the future for you too. But you go to yfellowship.com and get all the details of that, and it's going to be epic. We're going to have a good time. And speaking of good times, we've got an amazing guest. And if you have any other housekeeping items that I missed, Nick,
Yeah,
will you throw those out?
I'll throw one in. September
Throw one
16th,
in.
if you're in Salt Lake City,
Oh yeah,
come to Nacho Average Giant Gathering, where I think we'll be doing nachos. Hopefully, we'll see.
yeah.
But come join us live in Salt Lake City, and we'll be hanging out, just having a good time. Maybe a little karaoke, maybe a little nachos.
Maybe that would be weird if we just called it Nacho Average.
And then we'll have
when there's no nachos.
Awesome. Let's dive in. We got an amazing guest today.
Yes.
Today we have a truly extraordinary guest. Let's say it that way. Ankush Jain, based in the UK. Ankush wears many hats. He's a principles-based coach, business consultant, father, author, podcast host, and an inspiring public speaker. He's the visionary behind the powerful Men's Immersions, a transformative program that has become a global magnet for men seeking personal development. With a client list that spans continents, Ankush stands as one of Europe's most sought-after coaches, so much so that there's a waiting list just to work with him. But that's not all. Ankush is also revolutionizing the coaching industry through his AJC coaching career school, aiming to elevate coaching to a profession as prestigious as any other. He's the author of the book Sweet Sharing, Rediscovering the Real You, and is currently working on his second book, chronicling his own journey to coaching excellence. So without further ado, let's dive into this enriching conversation. Ankush, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, my question is this: were you born an amazing coach? Did that come from the womb, or is that something you developed over time?
Well, let me tell you an anecdote that might answer that question for you. I want to take you back 11 years ago, around about this time, and I was at home with my parents. My mom was cooking. She had her back to me, and I said, "Hey, Mom, I'm thinking about being a coach." And she didn't miss a beat, and she didn't turn around. She kept making her food, and she said, "How are you going to coach anyone when you can't even sort your own life out?" No, I wasn't born a coach. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
Isn't that how all coaches get started, though? Like, my life is a mess. I'm going to coach. Like mine,
right?
Like, yeah.
And here's the thing: I had at that stage been around what we might call personal development for about 11 years. and I'd had massive shifts in my own life, massive shifts in my journey. And in fact, the reason I had decided or thought about becoming a coach was it was something that I really enjoyed doing. It's something that I felt like, oh, I really get this personal development stuff. I think I know so much, and I'd like to help other people with this. And also, actually, that's not really the story. That was kind of how I thought about it afterwards. What really happened was I'd spent 2 years trying to decide what to do with my life, because life hadn't panned out exactly as I wanted it. I was 30, not married, no kids, no house. I wasn't exactly where I wanted to be. And I'd spent 2 years thinking about maybe moving abroad, having a career change. And one weekend I said, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to write down whatever. I'm going to think about different answers. And I just got in a muddle. And I say that the next day when I was cooking in the evening, God spoke to me, or I had a eureka moment, or whatever. I just had this voice that said, you should be a coach. And it was kind of 2 days after that I had that conversation with my mom. And then a week after that, I'm sitting in London in a hotel at the start of my year-long coach training, which I'd paid thousands and thousands of pounds for.
Yeah.
So, it certainly was an evolution.
Yeah. I heard the word muddle and I thought, is that just off-centered from middle? Is that it's down a little lower than from the middle in a muddle.
Muddle isn't all the way down to the bottom.
Not quite there.
Kind of in the middle.
You know what amazes me is the speed at which things move once you make a decision in your life. So you decide I'm going to be a coach and you speak it. And then within short time, you're diving into that world. So you'd always been around that environment, or you had been around that environment for a long time. But once you made that decision, you moved into it fairly quickly. With our show, what we tend to do is we go through our 12 journeys as a framework for everything, just to demonstrate to people what it's like to go from, a way of thinking of who you think you are, moving into something else. Now, as you had this awakening moment to, I'm going to be a coach, mom says what she says, were there any doubts or judgments of yourself that came up outside of it, what anybody else outside of you said? Were you saying things to yourself that could have hindered your ability to become a powerful coach?
Well, let me say this, and I should also say, my mom is a huge fan and supporter of mine. And in fact, 2 months after that incident, she said, "Would you coach me?" Which was a huge turnaround. So I don't want people to have a bad impression of her.
Don't send hate mail to Ankush's mom. She's
right.
amazing.
So I want to just clear that up. But yeah, it was such. I want to. People now see who I am in the world, and they just assume it was easy. It was a linear journey. At the time, me becoming a coach was so far-fetched in my own mind, and I was petrified, really to start on the journey. I don't want to give anyone the impression I just decided, had an insight, and then I just went for it, and it was just smooth sailing. I was really petrified. I definitely had my doubts. I was really committed. I was really driven. I was like, I'm going to really give this a go. And when I put my mind to something, I do really give it a go. But yeah, it was man, this was crazy. I didn't know anyone who'd done anything like this. Coaching is a lot more established in the States than the UK. In the UK, it's getting there, but it's still, 11 years ago, it was a different place. I didn't know anyone who was a coach in the UK. It certainly wasn't considered as a viable profession. And, I really didn't think, well, on one hand, I thought I was going to do it because if I put my mind to something, I can do it. And on the other hand, then the thoughts would come up really, are you really going to do this? So it was kind of both things happening at the same time, of this following my gut, following my intuition, and following this path. On the other hand, my brain going, this is completely bonkers and crazy.
Yeah. So I think with most people, when you stretch beyond where you've stretched before, there's a level of uncertainty that shows up. And in that uncertainty, it brings up all of our old patterns, and we get to navigate those patterns. And I've seen people who are really successful stretch themselves to a new goal that's beyond anything they've ever done. And they go back through this cycle of getting into their thoughts and emotions and judgments. and sometimes resistance to who they're becoming, right? Did your body try and reject this new way of being?
You know what? I don't know if it did.
Okay.
If I'm completely honest with you, there were a lot of learnings for
Okay.
me, a lot of learnings. But it was kind of weird because, if I look at other areas of my life, I've started things, I've not finished them. Um, I can relate to that journey that you talked about. And with coaching, it was there was something different about it.
Mm.
And I remember when I spoke to Jamie Smart, who was the guy who was running the coach training, and he said, just need to let you know that some people come on this training and they don't end up as coaches. They learn more about the mind, they learn more about themselves, and they decide, actually, I want to go somewhere else. And that's great, Jamie, for everyone else. I'm going to be a coach.
Mm.
So there was, and so I said, like I said earlier, there were moments where I had doubts, but there was this also something else where I was just convinced that this was going to be like a scary journey from hell, because I was going to step so far out my comfort zone, and at the same time I knew I was committed to it. It's like, oh my god, it's like when you're in the line for a roller coaster, you're like, I'm really going to do this. Like I'm actually going to do it, and it still doesn't mean that it's not scary, but you're on that thing and you're going to be on it.
Yeah, well, there's that calling, right? Like you mentioned earlier, that you had this impression, this inspiration, this God nudge, so to speak, and having that. How did that carry you through? Knowing that, no, I'm doing this. Did that create a different level of commitment for you versus somebody that's like, that sounds interesting. Coaching sounds interesting. Can you speak to
Yeah.
that a little bit?
Yeah, like this played out like when I first started. I was like, all right, okay, so I had the insight, I want to be a coach. Now what? So I was like, well, I better go and get some training. So I looked online, and I mean, there was everything. There was a $300 online course to give you a certificate, and then there was the course I did, which was £7,200. All right, it's like $10,000. There's a big range.
Right.
And I realized, if I'm going to do this, I'm really going to do it, because I was committed. I was like, I don't want to take it easy and play it safe. I was like, I really want to go all in on this. And so I went with a bigger course. But even when I was looking at courses, there was a maybe slightly more expensive kind of executive coaching program at a prestigious university. And I was looking at that as an option. And it had a great prospectus and whatever else. And again, I just kept following that nudge. I kept following my gut to where should I go, which direction should I move in, and I just kept following that all the way through. And so some things happened really quickly. So I coached very quickly my boss at work. He said, all right, you can coach me. We'll have a couple of sessions. I coached his boss for a couple of sessions. I convinced my boss to let me deliver a half-day training course for the team. So there were some really cool things that happened pretty quickly. And then other stuff took a lot longer than I anticipated. I thought, oh, I'll be making enough money to quit my job within 3 to 6 months. Yeah, that didn't happen. It took a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of both. But there were nervous moments.
Yeah.
So I remember in 2014, I was like, this is growing, but it's growing a lot slower than I anticipated. And I moved to a different company.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're not going to let me slide. I was probably coasting a little bit, because I was trying to build out, in my spare time, which I didn't have loads of, this coaching practice. And I knew something had to give. And I hired Steve Chandler, who's in my mind a huge giant, and has been a giant in my life.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, this is my last shot. Like if Steve Chandler can't help me grow this coaching practice, then I really should give up. Then it's not really meant for me.
Yeah.
But there was still that commitment. It wasn't just, oh, well, I'll try it and see. It was like, I'm going to give myself the best opportunity and put myself in the best position to really make this work. And it kind of reminds me of your book, right? It's like, in the book, Rick goes and finds a giant. Like, let me go and find someone who's going to help me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It was the same sort of thing. It's like, I wanted to surround myself with people who's going to help me create this vision of coaching that I wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, see, we're going to play with the other half of our journeys here, because the first half of our journeys are all about the inner world, but you get to the second half which is all about growth. You look at uncertainty, abundance, you look at vision, surrender, and nurture. And you have a legacy that will tie into that too, which is to revolutionize the coaching industry as your vision, as your gift to the world. But when people get to that space where they feel good enough within themselves to step into the unknown, you'll go back and visit these root journeys where you're constantly growing and coming back to the land of the giants and increasing your stature. But that uncertainty, when Rick goes out on the adventure and he's never been on this path before, he's used to the same old path, and he comes out into this new place. This is where I think a lot of people get hung up. They don't want to step into the unknown unless they think they know what's going to happen next. So they want to have some sense of certainty about what's going to happen before they step. And so what that tends to create is what they've always created. So they tend to repeat what they've always done and bring that into the future. And so it feels like certainty, but you feel insane at the same time because you want something bigger, but you keep doing the same thing, right? So how did you navigate, or how does somebody, let's go into coaching mode here. How do you coach somebody around uncertainty when they're stepping into creating possibility in their world that they've never created before?
Well, I can only really talk about one thing that I'm an expert in, and that's my own experience.
Okay.
Right. And so my experience is when I step into uncertainty, it's a combination of like fear and excitement.
Mm.
So when I stepped out, like I said earlier on this journey to be a coach, I was like, holy bleep, right? Like, am I really going to do this?
And you're okay
like,
to say the words here,
right?
I
So
believe
I don't know how family friendly the show is, right? So I was like, am I really going to do this?
Yeah.
Right? Am I really going to go for it?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I am. And it was this kind of fear, but it was also excitement. It was an adventure. And what happened was, in my coaching journey, I got introduced to something called the 3 principles, which is all about how the mind works. And that even gave me less of an excuse, right? So headlines of the principles is whatever we're feeling, that comes to us via our thinking. That's a very kind of oversimplification, but it'll work for now. So when I had a feeling of fear, I didn't have an excuse not to take action, because that fear wasn't telling me don't do it. The fear wasn't saying, or like a feeling of uncertainty. That uncertainty wasn't saying, hey, this is dangerous, you shouldn't do that. No, that was just what I was thinking about the path in that moment. So what happened was, combined with this commitment, and then also with this understanding I was introduced to, I was like, well, uncertainty is not a reason not to take action. Fear is not a reason not to take action. So just keep taking action. And I also had my own life experience to see, hey, when I step into the unknown, I always learn, I grow. It never turns out bad. Right? There's always, overall, it's always a positive thing that happens. So it was the same, with this coaching journey. I'd kind of had my own, what we might call a hero's journey before in other parts of my life. So I was like, well, I just need to do the same thing again. Step out of my comfort zone, keep moving forward, keep learning and progressing. And I will feel all the emotions I feel. That's part of the adventure. It would be boring if we were stepping outside of our comfort zones and like, oh, I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
That's not living, as far as I'm concerned. That's not fun. Part of that growth journey for me, part of being alive is growing and that awakening and expanding our mind to what is possible. Right. And you talked about earlier on that, when you commit to your journey, and then it's amazing how quickly you can go. I love this Bill Gates quote, which is, we overestimate what we can do in 2 years, and we underestimate what we can do in a decade. And that was so true for me, because again, I thought, oh, I'm going to start this coaching thing, and 3 to 6 months, I'll have the income and I'll quit my job. It took 2 years before I quit my job. But then when I look at what I achieved in a decade, I mean, when I started out, I didn't have any intention to be a visionary in this industry. I didn't have an intention to make X amount of money. I was like, if I can make a very meager sum of money, but I'm doing something that I'm passionate about and I enjoy, I want to do this. I want to pursue what my heart is calling for me. And what's happened is, you don't just stop. You don't get to a level and stop. I got to that stage and I was like, oh, but now I can see more and I can serve more and I can help more, and you just keep going.
You elevate your view, right?
Right.
So there's this idea that, the giant, when the giant goes on the adventure, like what you're describing here, the giant or the small prepares himself as much as they're able, and then they go out to the land of the giants and start venturing out with other giants. They're surrounded by the abundance that this world has provided with, all of the resources, materials, people, opportunities that are already there. Didn't have to go create those or put those there to have access to them, but had to step out on the journey, had to take that step of faith and trust in order for those to appear, because they were already there. But there's an elevating of the adventurer or the navigator. If you think about most of the great explorers in the world, they created themselves before they went into the unknown. So you talked about your hero's journey as, to a degree, you had built yourself up to be able to step into the unknown, right? And when you elevate yourself, you start seeing the abundance that surrounds you. You're like, holy crap, I am swimming in abundance. How can I use this to create the vision I have? And the vision you have is to revolutionize the coaching industry. There might be income that comes along with that, but you weren't seeking to be wealthy from it. You were seeking wealth to enhance your ability to create that revolution. Is that right?
Well, it's not even that.
Okay.
What happened was that something switched for me last year, where I realized when I was running my first school for coaches, I was like, this is way bigger than me. This is way bigger than, oh, this is a nice thing to do for my business, right? I was like, this is something that can really change the industry. And a thought might have come up, well, who are you to do that? And I was like, well, who am I not to do that? And as soon as I switched from having this vision that was much bigger than me or my business, the business became a lot easier. And so it wasn't even that. It's not that, oh, it was moved from making income for me to making income to something I can do with it. The income just became, that will take care of itself. I'm not even concerned about that. You're right. Like, there really is abundance, and I think the abundance comes to us when we are operating abundantly. So what shifted is, when I'm thinking about this bigger vision, that is like, hey, I can bring everyone up in the industry. I want the tide to rise for everyone. And so when I do that, like, I'm operating from abundance. Well, I don't do it for that reason, but abundance starts flowing to me. And I mean, like, yesterday I had a lady reach out who's in my current school, and she goes, can I put a deposit down for next year? And I went, you can. I mean, I'm not advertising that. And it's like, this is just stuff like this is happening all over the place when it's not about me, and I'm just serving. And then that's not just a saying. Like, I've got to really be that, because I find opportunities all the time now when I'm operating from that place of abundance to serve, to help, to offer to other people. And a lot of them, that's not a direct financial return for me, but that's not why I'm doing it.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. Some people have huge dreams and visions for the world. I saw a post this morning on the gentleman that started Chevrolet, and he started a car company. When he died, he was working as a mechanic in his own company. He was broke, but he didn't do it because of the money. He was doing it because he loved what he was doing, right? And sometimes it's about the vision. It's always about the vision. Because when we imagine beyond what is, we're imagining into something greater than ourselves currently. And that will always be out there as like this carrot on a stick, is like, there's always something bigger for us if we'll pursue it. And when you're pursuing that something bigger, then you start looking for resources to support that something bigger. And you find that the resources have always been there to support anything that you can imagine. So no matter how big your dream or vision gets, those resources are there for you. And then, like you talk about the surrender and the serendipity, I think of Steve Jobs that says you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only do that looking backwards. So you have to trust that they'll connect. And so you have these serendipitous moments where people come to you that you're not even aware of. You have no idea they're even looking at your program, right?
Yeah. And I want to say something. I don't see the vision as a carrot on a stick.
Okay.
I see the vision, rather than it being out there, I see it being in here.
Okay.
And I think that's a really big difference for me, that, if I look back, and again, you say you connect the dots back. When I look back through my whole journey, the thing that has kind of moved me forward every time is when I've got quiet and I've listened to the voice inside. When I've, as opposed to, because there are things we can create out in the world that are the carrot on a stick type visions. Like, I've had people over the years tell me, hey, why don't you do more men's immersions? I do 2 a year. Hey, why don't you do 4? Why don't you do 10? And that's kind of operating from the outer vision of like, do more, do more. And even when people say make a bigger impact, it's like, it's out there. For me, it's like when I've got quiet and gone the other way, and so many times in my coaching practice, in my business, I've done the opposite of what so many people are telling me to do, because I've got quiet and trusted that intuition, and that's always guided me in the right direction. I think that's a really important distinction.
Yeah, that is huge. There's a quote from Rich Litvin that says that your vision is what's coming from you, not where you're going, and maybe he got that from you.
He didn't, but I like it. I'm very aligned to that.
The expression, right? The acorn is already the oak tree, so the oak tree expresses from the acorn is the idea that you're presenting here. And truthfully, the room for growth out here is unlimited. There is no cap out here. But we tend to cap ourselves. We tend to box ourselves in. Like Townsend Wardlaw said, that the moment you believe a belief, it becomes limiting by the nature of believing it. That we tend to box ourselves in and say, that's all the universe can do for me. And so we speak that to the world, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And what you're offering here is not so much the carrot and the stick of what everybody thinks you should be doing or this grander vision, but following those gentle nudges of growing into essentially the oak tree, or the vision that is coming from you. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And I think what's important is when I've had those nudges so many times, they've been nudges towards something that I have no idea how to do.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Wow. Yep.
So some of the outer ones, like when people have said, hey, do more of this, or grow this thing, or do more of that, or write another book, or whatever, they're things that like are really tangible, and how to, like, oh, we kind of can see that. The nudges, like when I said quit my job to become a coach, that was so out there for the UK at that time. For someone like me, I had no idea how to do it. And then the how to comes afterwards. It's the same thing with this vision for the school and for the industry. I kind of know, but I don't really know. I have a direction where I can see it going, but I don't know at all how it's going to happen. But I'm convinced it's going to happen. I'm convinced if I stay on that path, it's going to happen. And there's so many things like that. And I realize now that I can literally speak so many things into existence. If I just commit and speak it, I can create. And I've got other things in my mind that I would love to create in the world as well, not just this.
Yeah.
And it can really be done through me, and not kind of hold back on that.
Nassim Nicholas Taleb says that we are the empirical decision makers who hold uncertainty as our discipline, that the greatest and highest human pursuit is to move forward with incomplete information. And too many of us hold back waiting for complete information before we'll even take a step. But what you're offering here is that the stepping is the growth. The stepping is the nudge. When you don't know how it's going to come about, you're still not afraid to create the vision. I think it really comes back to how clear is your vision that you're creating. When you speak your vision to the universe, and I love this, I'm going to rant a little bit and then I'll turn it over to you. The prediction, right? The idea of before words, prediction. So before you speak it, you plan it out in your mind or your intuition, and then you speak it, and then you start stepping into it, and all these things come in to support it. It transcends time, it transcends space. They're both relative. They come into your space where you haven't been looking for them before. They just show up. But it all comes back to that clear vision and then speaking that vision to the world. Is there a process to that? So when somebody is doing something they've never done before, and they start to envision, a lot of people will hold themselves back on what they speak to the world based on who they think they are. But
I think there is a process, and
okay,
I want to shout out my coach. Some people might know him, Steve Hodison,
yeah,
because he really helped
Heard
me
of
with
that guy?
this. Last year I signed up to a 10-hour coaching agreement with him, and he said, I'm not going to do anything with you until we do this foundational work, which is creating what he calls your document.
yeah,
And it's a set of declarations that each person has. They're not affirmations, they're a set of declarations around who each person is being in the world. So that's the language. And I'll be honest, I was very skeptical of the process, but I was like, Steve's got a great reputation. I'm not going to hinder him in helping me. I'm going to give him the best shot at helping me. So I threw myself into that process. And it's been one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life. And it's fundamentally rewired how I see myself. It's rewired my self-image. And it's been the catalyst for so much of the change that has occurred over the last year. So
okay.
that was the starting point.
Can you explain that a little more? Because our viewers may not have context for the document and the power of the document and what that is even. And the idea of saying something like "I am this," not as an affirmation but as a declaration. I've been challenged by people who have said, well, if you speak it any other way than you are that already, then, and you speak it from the space of I am becoming that, so anywhere that I am not that, I am realigning with being that. And they said, well, that's not powerful enough. You are that. If you declare yourself as that, then be that. But can you speak about the document a little more, and then keep going about what that is and why it's so powerful?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone has a document. And when I say document, everyone has a bunch of beliefs about themselves that they hold to be true. Everyone. And some of them are positive, some of them are negative. Everyone has these. So you might be listening to this, and in the recesses of your mind, and you may not even admit this to people, you may have a belief or an idea or a thought, which is, I'm fat. Now you might be clinically obese, or you could be in great shape, but you may have a belief, I'm fat. You may have a belief, I'm stupid. You may have a belief or a thought of nobody likes me. You may have a belief or a thought of I'm always, uh, earning just enough to pay my bills. I'm always, hand to mouth, right? You have a bunch of beliefs. You might have a belief that my wife is too good for me, or if my
That's
people
true.
knew me, they wouldn't like me, right? And you have this running through your head, and you laugh about it, but it's true. Now here's the thing.
I have to. I'm obligated to say that about my wife, though.
All right.
She's pretty amazing.
So here's the thing, right? A lot of times we speak things in jest, and dude, believe me, like I joke around as much as anyone, and I've learned over the last year that our word is so freaking powerful that even when we say stuff in jest, we're sowing seeds, right? It's like you've got a garden and you're sowing seeds, and we're sowing those seeds, and like Steve has told me so many times, if you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple tree. There is nothing you can do. Once you plant an apple seed, there's nothing you can do to turn it into an orange tree, right? You can pour orange juice in the soil. You can put a little loudspeaker. You're an orange. You're an orange. You can do whatever you want. You're going to get an apple tree. That's it. So everyone has a bunch of beliefs about themselves that are, let's call them negative, that they are planting in their garden of their self-image. Hey, Dave. They're planting in their garden of their self-image, which is creating them consciously or unconsciously. And I had a bunch of these things. And like Steve said, this is foundational work, right? You want to go and create something in the world, but you've got this belief in your head, like, I'm stupid. There's nothing you can do. You're going to get the fruit of that, which is I'm stupid, right? You're going to get the fruit of I am weak, or you're going to get the fruit of, and I've taken 40, 50 people through this process right now. Every single time, it is miraculous. It is absolutely miraculous, the shifts I've seen in people and the shifts I've seen in me, because you cannot overemphasize your self-image, right? Like, if you have I am poor and you're really well off, you will just create poverty in your life. You will not be able to help it. And so this isn't just about, all right, well, let's say a bunch of nice things about ourselves, which are, like Steve calls very lovingly, putting frosting on dog shit. Or like I say to people, if I get a dog shit donut, I get, dog shit turned into a donut. Is there any amount of toppings you can put on it that's going to make it edible? You can have all the toppings you want, whipped cream, chocolate sprinkles, sauces, whatever. No, you can pile it high. It's still not edible, right? There's nothing you can do about it. So we've got to clean that out first. So the process of creating a document is a really deep self-forgiveness process, where first we have to identify what those beliefs are about yourself, and then go through this process, which Steve's taught me, to forgive ourselves for those judgments. And it's not forgiving the statement of fact, it's forgiving the judgment, because they are judgments against ourselves. So when we forgive those judgments, then from that exercise, we create new statements, and they're not statements that are intellectual in nature. When I'm creating this with my clients, again, I talk about it's like going inwards, and I'll say words will come through you, and it sounds a bit weird, but words come through people, and I say, don't stop them, don't get in your way, just speak them, and those form the start of people's document. So this is what I did a year ago, and it was the foundational piece in terms of language of how I create myself that started changing everything. I started saying things differently. I started acting differently. And you're right, that's not the end. That's the start of the process. Now I have my document. Now I've got to be it. And there's levels to everything. So one of my statements is, I'm an amazing husband and father. One of the things I got to see through this process was, I didn't believe that about myself before. Those words came through me, and I see, oh, those are true. So this is a year ago. That's true. It's actually true. I didn't see that about myself, but I am an amazing husband and father. And there's levels to that. So I'm an amazing husband and father. Can I be even more? Can I be that more? Okay, yeah. Now, can I be that more? Oh, yeah. Can I be that more? Oh, yeah. And over time, I'm going up, or you could say I'm expanding my state of being to be each of those statements. And I tell people, you can meditate on one line of your document for your whole lifetime, and that can be your life's purpose. Right? So the first stage is creating yourself through this document process, but then you realize, you start to understand, or I certainly started to understand, whoa, this language thing is pretty damn powerful. So if I create myself like that, guess what? I get to create my spouse like that. I get to create my kids like that. I get to create my clients like that. I get to create you guys like that. Right?
Yeah. Can I insert something here on
Sure.
this? A thought that keeps popping up. I remember there's a scripture that says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh, right? And the idea here of what you're speaking is that your word becomes flesh. It becomes reality. It becomes objective, measurable in this reality. Other people can see it. And that word, thank God we have a prediction, pre-words. So before we speak it to the world, we have a chance to play it out up here. But often we're playing out based on who we think we are. So if we think we're limited, then that's what we're predicting, and that's what we're speaking. We're judging ourselves as limited. And the thing with judgment is it's after assessment. It's like you've gone through and evaluated yourself and your life, and then you've judged it, which you've given it a valuation. And then from that judgment, then you act and speak to the world. And then that's what shows up. And so the idea of forgiving yourself of your judgments is a way of not causing additional harm over those judgments that you have of yourself. But people don't say it as a judgment. They say it as a statement of fact, right? They say,
absolutely.
Does that make, yeah. So can you speak to that? Like, can you separate judgment from statement of fact so that people can start to forgive themselves for their judgments, not their statement of quote unquote fact?
Well, absolutely. The first step is you got to look at it, and people don't even want to look at it. They have these such deep-rooted beliefs about themselves. I mean, when I went through this process, I was like on the verge of a breakdown because I was like, yeah, this all looks true to me, right? And I didn't want to look at it. I wanted to avoid it, but I had to look at what was there first, and then work with a skilled person. In my case, was my coach, to go through it and help see that this is all made up, because it all is, right? Now, the thing is, no one is more powerful than you to create your reality, right? So if you have a belief, hey, I'm unlovable, which people do, then it doesn't matter if everyone turns around and says, no, you're really lovable, we love you. And because your brain will go, no, I'm unlovable. They don't know what I'm really like. They don't know who I really am. So the first step is just really looking at it and realizing anything that you believe about yourself, anything you believe about other people, anything you believe about the economy or the universe or your neighbor or anything, that has to be a judgment. It's the nature of thought.
We
It's not
form
based on
opinions,
fact.
right?
Absolutely.
Always.
We live in a a subjective world. Like we are perceiving the world through our thinking. So just know this, that anything, and this is true for me because we put it about fact about ourselves, we do it about our neighbors. So I've got a neighbor who lives across from me, and I had a bunch of negative thinking about him. It just looked like a fact. Oh, and I can give you 5 reasons why I think the guy's a so and so, right? Oh, because he did this and he did that, and I can tell you a great story, and I can convince you. Oh, yeah, he is.
Yeah.
But that's the power. Like even that's made up, because actually how I felt about him, my other neighbor probably thought, yeah, he's a bit funny, but he wasn't as, didn't feel as viscerally negative about him. And my wife probably didn't feel as bad about him. What's the difference? If it's the same guy, why are 5 different people thinking differently about him who all live in the same neighborhood?
It
It
feels like
has to be
Oprah.
made up.
It's like you get a thought and you get a thought and you get a thought. Everybody gets a thought, and we're all speaking our truths, and they're all different truths.
Right. It's not capital T truth, it's made up. So that certainly applies to other people. It definitely applies to ourselves. It's the same. So that's kind of like fundamental at the beginning, to see that is made up, whatever you think about yourself. So and whatever you think about me, or whatever, like there are people watching the show, and there's going to be a whole variety of opinions of what people think about you, me, right, and the show. And it's made up. It's not objective reality.
Okay, so there was a if the idea of subjective reality, if the reality is subjective, and objectively we might be able to see it as other people, something that in common we could see this objective thing, this object. But truly our opinions are what make it subjective. And truthfully, that creation was subjective because somebody had the thought that they could do that thing. And so objectively we can measure it, but subjectively it was created, and it was created from the abundance that was already there. And they had to reach beyond what was into the unknown with their imagination to be able to make that happen. And what imagined was who they thought they were. Like, who are they to create such an amazing thing? Like, we're on a computer right here. Somebody had the idea and the thought, I'm going to make a computer. And they took sand and dirt and mixed it all together and created what we see today. It's simplified, but it was their ability to imagine, I can do that. And then they took the reality that was and transformed it into what we see today. But it took an imagination, and it took before that document of who they thought they were to even be able to do that. Is that accurate? Or is there a twist on that?
Yeah, I think I'm following in what you just said there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like to keep things really, really simple.
Sure.
So
yeah, I like to make them complex. I get it.
This is where I'll just keep it simple.
Yeah.
You have an opinion about yourself, and everything you do in the world is filtered through that opinion of how you see yourself.
Beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
You do that with every single other person in the world too. And it's all a creation. So now here's the thing, if I think you're a jackass, that's a subjective, it's not true, there's a subjective thing, it's an opinion.
Do you really think that about me?
I'll tell you after the show. So now here's the thing. If I believe that about you,
Yeah.
I will actually create it. We're not just having an opinion, we're actually creating all the time.
Huh.
Right? Because what I'll do is I'll go, well, he's a jackass. So then I'll say, and I'll go out and tell people you're a jackass. And then maybe you'll think, oh, why is he going out and doing that? And you'll say, hey, Kush, stop talking about me like that. And I'm like, see, he is. And it's a creation. But if we can create that negatively, we can create it positively. If I create you as, I think you're an incredible human being. Shout out to Teresa.
Speaking
right?
of, we were just talking about amazing human beings, and look who showed up.
Right. Perfect.
So if I say
all of you,
right, if I say you are one of the most remarkable people I've ever met in my life, I'm going to create you that way for me. I'm going to influence you because you're like, wow, Kush is saying that about me. And then I'm going to say that, go around telling people, oh, do you know how remarkable he is? Like, really, do you know how amazing he is? And it becomes a creation because I'm literally through my words doing that. And it's not, and it happens in a microwave, in a micro way, and it happens in a macro way. In a microwave, I've got a son who's, a few years old. If I tell him, hey, you know how loved you are? Do you know how amazing you are? Do you know how wonderful you are? That's not just my opinion. That's actually having an effect on who he's going to be in the future. It's a creation because it's helping him create him.
Yeah. You're speaking him into being, right? You're demonstrating how to speak for himself into being.
Absolutely.
If parents could do that for the kids, that would be amazing. To speak your kids into the creation, the power that they are. That'd be beautiful.
I wasn't born like this. I'm learning on the job as a parent.
Yeah.
There was a phase where, he was acting up and stuff, and I kept saying, "You're being really naughty. You're being really naughty." And my dad picked me up on this. And he said, "If you keep saying that, he's gonna start really being that." And my dad's not a coach. He doesn't know about this stuff. He hasn't read The Ultimate Coach or the Giants and the Smalls or any of that. And he picked up on it, and I went, "Dad, you're absolutely right. Thank you." And so now when my son's naughty, even if I'm telling him off, I'll give him a hug and I'll say, that wasn't very kind. And I go, and you're a kind person. So this is out of character. Like, I'm creating that. I'm like, that wasn't very kind, and you're kind.
Yeah, you as a creature, as a creation, are kindness. That behavior was something other than that.
Absolutely.
That's all it was, right?
Yeah, I remember once when he was not listening, and let's say he got told off, and he was a little bit upset. And I said, you weren't listening today, were you? And he said no. And I said, do you think Papa still loves you? And he said, I don't know. And I said, yes, I will always love you. And I know that's like telling him that over and over again. It's really important. That's a creation there and then for him to know that my love is not conditional on him being good or not. Right? It's all a creation. So we see that with children. Well, if we see it with children, or you see it with employees, if you tell an employee, hey, you're doing a good job, they're more likely to be motivated. And if that applies to other people, of course it applies to ourselves.
Yeah, beautiful.
There's no other way.
It applies in everything because we're humans and we're projecting humanness on everything we do, right? Whether it's leading a team or running a family or doing anything else. And any other relationship, it's all a creation. One of my declarations is I am that my relationships are easy, fulfilling, and loving, right? And to me, that is simply that I get to project that on other people. Like I create that. It's not up to them. That's my creation for them, right? They get to create their own version of that.
Yeah. And this is what's really important. You have to be it. It's not enough. This is where this moves away from affirmations, is you have to be it. It's not enough for me to say, hey, like one of my statements is, I'm powerful presence and deep listening, especially with my wife and son. Now, there are times where I get distracted. Well, if I've got to be that, if I say that, it's not enough to say that. I've got to be it. So there might be a time where I am distracted, like on a weekend or something. And my wife said, hey, you're not listening, or you're being really distracted. I go, yes, honey, you're right. And I'll take my phone and I'll put it in a drawer. Like, it's not enough just to say the words. I've got to live into what I'm saying.
Right.
And this is so important for me. I'll just give you a little bit, if I can take a minute. When I help people create a document, I give them like 10, 15 things to do that are minimum. I say, this isn't an exhaustive list. This is minimum. So I just want to talk you through it, because I think this really helps people when they understand what's different about this process. Right? One, they have to learn it off by heart. Some people have statements, they have 100 statements. Like, you learn it off by heart. That makes a massive difference. Two, you got to speak it every morning and every evening. Minimum, out loud, not in your head, out loud. There's minimum. Three, if you're right-handed, write out left-handed. If you're left-handed, write out right-handed. Get it in you. Do that more than once, right? Number four, if you're married, get your spouse to speak your document out to you. So my document is, I am loved and I'm loving, right? So I have a recording where my wife's gone, Ankush is loved and he is loving. Ankush is gorgeously lovable even when they don't know it. I'm getting her to speak it. That's so
true.
powerful, right? I've got my dad to speak my document to me. I've got my old coach, Steve Chandler, to speak my document, and they're recorded. And I have these recordings and they mean the world to me. And it's not, they're not just speaking it. I've had to enroll them in, like, this means something. Can you please do this for me? And so when I have clients, I get them to enroll people in their world to speak their document back to them. Right?
I wonder who I could figure out who to read that to me. Ankush, Dave Orton. Yeah. Teresa. Yeah.
It's powerful. It's powerful, and it takes it to a level above than just having a bunch of statements.
Yeah.
I ask people to upgrade their document. So I've got mine printed in A2, which is large. I have it designed by a professional graphic designer. I went and got it professionally framed. Right? I tell people, you don't want it just stuck on the wall somewhere, or some people don't even have it printed out. It's like, you want to see it every day. It's designed to be public. It's designed to be seen, right? So I have a client of mine who's a CEO, and I said, have one at home and have one in your office. And I said, I know you feel a bit uncomfortable about it. Step out your comfort zone, have it out there, so that anyone that comes into your office, any of your employees, they see that's who they're working for. That's who they're working with. It's a powerful statement. And I say to people, this is more important than your birth certificate. This is more important than your marriage certificate, because this document you're creating in the world. So give it that importance in the world.
Is it a living document though, or is it a one and done? Like, not one and done as though you don't repeat it, but do you add to it? Do you evolve it, right, with the document? Or is it, no, this is me and this is who I'll be the rest of my life?
So it's a living document. You can add to it. However, what I advise, and other people may advise differently, some people are constantly tweaking it. When you're constantly tweaking it, then you can't do these other things. So for me, it's like, kind of like, go through the process, create it, but then get it to some level of completion. So that you can then print it. Then you can then start memorizing it. You can then enroll other people to speak it back to you. You can do things with it. But if you're always tweaking it and you're constantly changing this word and that word, it becomes like a rolling stone gathers no moss, right? Like, you can't do anything with it.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. It's like having a vision for a home, and then you've got all these change orders. Like, you want this changed and that changed. And then the contractor's like, I don't even know what to freaking build you, because you keep changing things. So it never really ends up as a creation, because it's a vague vision of your future. It's constantly changing. So nobody knows how to follow it. I think of, the Habakkuk 2:2 is, write the vision clearly and put it on tablets, so he that runs with it may deliver it. So it's not delayed, right? And so the vision of creating yourself is the very first vision that we're going to be creating. Is we are going to create ourselves, and that will create our world.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Absolutely. And I haven't even gone through the whole list, right? These are just some of the things that I ask people, and people are surprised, like, whoa, this is a lot. And I said, yeah, this is what's going to take it into something that really does something for you, and not just a piece of paper with some lines on it that doesn't do anything. Right? It's to be used. For me, it's my North Star. So I say to anyone who's got a document that's a coach, Make sure every single client of yours knows your document. Every time you speak it, you're creating yourself. I say to him, if you're a leader or an employer, make sure every single one of your employees knows your document. It's designed to be public. If I said my document just to me or just to my family and no one knew it, it would have far less impact in the world than it does right now. Right? So, and because people then can help you step into it. I say my document every day, twice a day. My wife hears me say it. My son, who's not even 4 years old, knows lines from my document. My wife will sometimes say to me, hey, this thing that you're annoyed about or whatever, how does that play into your document? And it helps me. I don't get annoyed by it. Like, that's great because it helps me step into who I really want to be in the world. And I also say to people, if your document is something really powerful, if you're creating yourself as powerful in the world, you will not be your document. I'm not my document in some way every single freaking day. And this is where we come back to self-forgiveness. I don't judge myself for that. It's an opportunity to keep stepping into who I'm being. It's an opportunity to grow. So I keep coming back to that. And, I keep finding ways to being that as well. Sorry, you were going to say.
Well, no, that the blueprint lets you know where to come back to. So when you have that blueprint of your life and you get off course, you're not the blueprint. You're going and doing something else. When you wake up to it, it gives you a chance to re-engage with the blueprint. And so it's the plans of your creation. And in a way, you talk about the secrets of successful coaching. Part of that would come back to who are you first before you create anything in your world, because that blueprint will lay the foundation for everything else that follows. So is it super important as a coach to have a document for yourself before you even talk about building your coaching business?
I would say if you'd said that to me a year ago, I would have said no way. Let me put it this way. There's not a single client that I work with who's a coach or a non-coach that I don't create a document with first. It's so profound. And personally, the way that I do it, I like to do it in person. I have done it with a few people online, but I like to do it in person. There's something really powerful about doing this process and really doing it well and going deep with it. So I could write down a process on a piece of paper or two. I go, here's the high level process, but it wouldn't have the impact. But really creating it with someone, I cannot overemphasize the power it's had. And because I see it not only in my life, I see it in so many of my clients' life, how they've changed. And I mean, even physically, like I have a line in my document is I'm a role model for fitness, right? I have a line, I am that I make being Indian sexy. I have a line that
you do.
I'm a role model for my son, right?
Yeah.
I have lost 8 kilos this year in a very short space of time. And this is like a world exclusive here. I wasn't planning on showing this, right? This is how much I've changed.
World exclusives.
Amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how much my body's changed in less than 4 months, right? That's my back.
Amazing. Yeah.
And that's my side, right? Like it's 8 kilos. It's a big change, right? If you had told me that I would need to drop this much weight and I've never looked this good. I've never been this strong. I'm hitting personal bests in the gym. I bench pressed more than my body weight today. And in a relatively short space of time, that has come from me being my document and speaking my document, because there probably been about 10 points in the last 3 or 4 months where I would have given up. Something's happened. I've had a setback. I've had an injury. The old me who had a belief I'm weak or I'm not disciplined or whatever, I would have gone, oh, see, there's another reason. I would have had a really good excuse to drop out physically.
Right.
And I haven't, and I've stuck to it.
That's beautiful. I think, unexpected ending to this show here, because we come into it looking for tips and tools and tricks on how to be a giant in the world and how to be, a successful coach. But it truly comes back to who are you creating yourself to be first creates everything else in your world. And when you're not being that, when you get distracted, like I like the idea of distraction. It's okay. You got distracted. Forgive yourself for judging yourself if you do that. but return to your document, return to creating yourself first, and then let that do the creating of your world.
Yeah, let me just say this. I spent 3 days with 36 coaches in London recently. It's the first of the part of the start of my 6-month coaching school. We spent almost the whole weekend talking about being, because for me, if coaches understand who they are being and how to create themselves, then we can change the industry. Then we can change the consciousness of the planet, is what I said, through coaching. If you don't do that, you can have all the tips and strategies and techniques in the world. It's going to fall flat.
It's frosting dog poop, right?
That's it.
Yeah. Amazing. Any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Just wanted to really acknowledge both of you guys. You've done an incredible job with creating this channel, creating your tribe. I love what you both are up to in the world. I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys next year in Birmingham in May. And my final thoughts are, if you want to create a document, they're going to be doing that in May next year. So I don't know if we can put that in the show notes somewhere. If you haven't bought tickets, come to the UK next year, buy your tickets, be in the room. I'll be speaking there. I think both of you, one of you is speaking there.
Yeah.
It's like both of us, really,
It's like
when
both
one
of
of
you
us
are speaking
speaks.
there. It's the same thing.
I
And
imagine I speak like Nick.
Yeah.
it's ridiculously cheap for 2 days, and you'll create your document through it too.
It is. We'll put that in the comments as well and share that for the Birmingham event. So TUB. Ryan, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, it's interesting. We say this a lot. We'll post something in the tribe, or we'll have an experience, and then that week on the show, that thing comes up. It's I don't know what's going on in the back rooms of heaven, or whoever the puppet masters are in the world, but I posted in our tribe the other day about something that Steve had told me, that you can only be as close to someone as your thoughts of that person. And also inside of that, yesterday in our Limitless Giants group, which is a group that we created to host after, Laura Lunt created it, to host after people go through our SG course, our Sum Gigante course. And in all of that, we talked about how that could be related to you, not externally. And I had never really thought of it that way, as like I can only be as close to myself as my thoughts of myself. And it changed some things for me. And he went in and commented, you got to go into the tribe and read through the comments, and also through the Ultimate Coach, because the thoughts that people started to put down on in the comments section were profound. For me, it changed my relationship with myself. Again, I saw myself as different, as something greater than I did before I thought about that. And I have the opportunity to create myself second to second, minute to minute, day to day. And when I don't live up to that, I get to forgive myself and learn from the experiences and grow, and increase in the thoughts of myself and of others. And it's given me a powerful tool, Ankush. It's just what you were saying of being a successful coach, being a successful husband or father, or anything that I create myself as. Um, it starts to manifest, and I become closer with those people that I speak my thoughts of, and I get closer to myself as I speak the thoughts about myself, however I want them to be. And Steve Hardison says, "Do not read this sentence." My thoughts of Steve Hardison are that he loves. Um, He loves you into existence. He loves you into being something way more than you thought you were. Before you could see it, he sees it. Same with Eric, same with Teresa, same with all the people that are on here. Same with John Patrick Morgan.
Absolutely.
And JP and Eric or I think it's Thursday or Friday. I have it on my calendar. I signed up for the Zoom call for the document creation. And I'll put that too in the comments. So those of you who would like to go to the Ultimate Coach Facebook group and find that link as well. I'll find it and tag it here. But this would be a powerful exercise, and sitting here with and a practice, but sitting here with Ankush, you are all those things, Ankush. You are already all those things, and you're speaking them into existence. And that is how I experience you. That and much, much more. You are making Indian amazingly sexy. So thank you so much for being that person for me, being a giant in my world and helping me to elevate my belief in myself, and changing the thoughts that I have. Um, I appreciate you. Love you.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me, and you're really reminding me that, you know, when the tide rises, you know, all the boats rise, because you know, it works both ways. You've blessed my life, like I don't know if we said this when we were recording. My son and I like reading your book, and that's enhanced our life. And just hearing your story from Steve has been really powerful for me, in terms of, you got one thing and you just went out and created a whole book. So I think, you know, sometimes people ask, who are you to say these things about yourself? And I had someone ask me that about that recently, and I realized I'm the same as you. Everyone can say this. When one person creates themselves as great, it doesn't take anything from anyone else. It helps everyone see we're all great. And I see, the more I see the divine in me, the more I see it in everyone else. You know, you, everyone that you mentioned, and people who don't even like me, you know, I see the divine in them. And you know, yes, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for Steve, who uses language again just to create me, throwing on the page there about modern Gandhi. When he said that first, I was thinking, that's crazy. You know, like, really? Is that just the most famous Indian person he knows? So he said that name. And yeah, I've started to step into that. And it's been so powerful, like crazy powerful. It's shifted who I'm being. It shifts how I show up. And it really is the power that you said, that Steve sees things in us that we don't even see in ourselves. And through that, everyone benefits. Everyone benefits.
Man, this is amazing. Thank you. Thank you both for being on here. Kush, do you go by Kush or Ankush?
Both, but
both.
Kush is fine. Yeah.
Kush. So the wisdom that comes through that creation of you, the wisdom of stepping beyond who you think you are, and it becomes an expression of you, is just so powerful. You know, for those that are watching, I hope you can see in yourself the power that you have that's already in there. You're already equipped as the giant. The giant's already there. Now it's unbecoming anything that makes you feel small through that forgiveness of your judgments of yourself, because that's all that's happening. So when you feel small and insignificant and insecure, it's you judging yourself as that, and then forgiving yourself for the judgments that you have around that allows you to create it differently. And truly nothing is off the table. There's no limit. And so as you step into your world, really slow down with, who are you declaring yourself to be right now? And how can we shift that if that's not the most powerful version? Slow down with that, because what we know, you know, we always use the X, or the symbol of the X, is you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're right on time. You're doing what you need to be doing. You're not falling behind, right? So if you are the X, then you are where you're coming from, and you're also where you're going. And so really slow down with, who are you declaring yourself to be? And let's shift that if it's not powerful. And so thank you for being on the show with us. Thank you for your wisdom. This will go live on our channel on Wake Up with Giants TV. And if you haven't subscribed to that, make sure you do. Somewhere over there is the image of that. So subscribe to the channel so you get all these live videos. Come join us in the Tribe of Giants. That's our global community where we're helping people become giants every day. Thank you for being a part of this, and we will see you in the next episode. Make it a giant day.